Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Cannabis Tech Talks. This is Patricia Miller, managing editor of Cannabis and Tech Today. Joining me is Lulu Sway, Chief Experience Officer at On the Revel, President of the Cannabis Media Council, and advisor for Oakland Hi-Fi. Thanks for chatting with us, Lulu.
Thanks, Patricia. I'm really excited to be here. Cannabis and tech and all the things like I am passionate about. So it's a pleasure.
Yeah. So I think your experiences really lend itself well to our audience and sort of their key interests. So I'm excited to hear your perspective. Before you joined cannabis, you were working in really tech forward spaces. Can you tell me a little bit about your background before you got into cannabis and the whole scene?
Yeah, of course. This is going to age me a little bit, but I grew up in as my career in the tech space when Web 1.0 was blooming. So I kind of grew up from Web 1 to Web 2 to Web 3, and for the past probably 17 years now, I've been what is now called a user experience and research designer. So designing products and services in the tech space using lean UX methodologies and user-centered design methodologies.
And so, I mean, that's super niche in itself, right? And then you looked at cannabis and said, I'm going to go even more niche. What sort of what drew you to that space?
So I've always been really curious about how people work and why people, do things. And my whole goal in the space for UX is, creating tools and products and services that help you do your work so you have more time to do the things that you love. And I've worked across different types of verticals from, nonprofit to medical to fintech to instruments. So I designed the software that ran, Thermo Fisher's mass spec and chromatography machines, which was really fun to do. I did cancer reagent testing machines for Ventana, which has just got bought by Roche. So those were always fun. And my family is all engineers and science and doctors, so it just kind of fit. And plus, if you talk to anybody around me that's close to me, I just like to tell people how to do things more efficiently. So it just kind of suited my personality. Um, so I was designing systems for different types of groups, and then I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I grew up in Oregon and went to school in Washington State. And about 2015, 2016, some of my friends from college jumped into the cannabis space when it went legal in Washington. And what was really exciting was, I mean, they had their grow, but they had another part of their operation, which was all about the extraction, processing, and post processing side of the house. So they called me first to say, hey, we're working with the seed to sale system. I don't remember which one it was at the time. They're like, it's really awful. As one, as it does happen in technology, when you're kind of trying to launch something from one industry, you'll borrow something from another and kind of like Frankenstein it together.
Oh yeah.
And in this case, the seed to sell software was just not fitting with how they were trying to run their business. And right when they asked me to kind of take a look at it, the software platform kind of closed off their APIs. So there really wasn't anything you could do. At least if they had an open API, you could like try to create something that worked a specific way that made sense, and then feed the information back. But they just stopped doing that. So I was like, sorry guys, there's nothing I can really do to like try to ease your workflows or SOPs. And then they said, well, why don't you just kind of hang out and see if there's anything you want to do in the space. So I lived with these guys for about a year in Belfair, Washington, learning about everything that came their way on the grow side, as well as, being able to learn what was happening on the extraction, post processing, and processing side. I got to go with them on installs in different locations. So I was able to see in different markets, at home, kind of in your basement type of extraction folks to
Right.
the $10 million build outs that were happening on the East Coast. So that
Wow.
was my foray into the legal cannabis space. And then in New York, I met Jacoby, my co-founder, and he came up from the from the Colorado market. So it was the first time I was able to in New York have a actual conversation about like the supply chain or what was really happening because we were in New York and it was a lot about advocacy, it was a lot about fundraising, but there
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of information about boots on the ground. It was
Mm.
more like speculation. So it was really nice to just have someone in New York to talk to because I was here part time as well. And that's how we started on the Revel. And just side note, our first name was actually the Cannabis Tech Group because Jacoby is also from the tech space, and that's what we were trying to focus on. But it just turned out that there was so much more that we wanted to do in terms of like getting people who look like us interested in cannabis for opportunities. So then we became On the Revel.
I love that. So let's talk about On the Revel. It seems like you've got a passion for education and for networking and for like technology, bringing all these disparate pieces together that really all do make up the cannabis industry. So, what is On the Revel? What's it doing? And what's sort of unique about it in the space?
So what we noticed in our first, couple of years in cannabis was like there was kind of everybody was learning, but there was also a little bit of gatekeeping of information. Very
Mm-hmm.
specific people were allowed access. Very specific people were allowed, had the ability to fundraise. And what was really important for us, for Jacoby and I, was the fact that we wanted resources and we wanted information available for everybody. So,
Mm.
not everybody is going to be a cannabis entrepreneur. Not everybody is going to join the cannabis industry, but we thought it was just really important that if people were interested, they would have information, real information, transparent information, and access to good vendors, access to good lawyers, access to all the folks in our community that we've built in the past 6 years within New York, as well as the other markets that we've were, able to go and work with and meet. So that's what we're trying to do is just make democratized information available to the people. That's our main purpose. So yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I think it's interesting that it's less so now, but over the past several years, I've been writing about the space. There is certain information people just don't want to share. They consider it like proprietary. That's our secret sauce. But I think the industry has so much potential to grow into a better space and a space that can better serve its constituents if people would just share that information and if more people get access to it, I think you would see more diversity in the industry.
I think diversity and also different ways of doing things and different SOPs, right? Like, there's only a certain amount of way you can extract something. There's only a certain amount of way, like, you know what I mean? Like there's you can't bend the science too much. So I don't know, like all this like holding your cards close to your chest or this kind of scarcity mindset, it's
Mm,
not something that we believe in that can grow anything. So what we're trying to foster is this abundance mindset. Like, hey, there's plenty of opportunities for everybody. We're seeing a lot of fallout in other markets where it hasn't kind of worked. And I just think we have this opportunity, especially in New York, to collaborate, with folks from other markets. A lot of folks from other markets are trying to come into New York. New York it's a different beast altogether. You have to have your person, your guy, your connections to make anything work in New York. So I
mm.
really feel like this is going to be really necessary for some type of mix between a New Yorker and an industry expert. Like that's the only way it's really going to work.
Okay. See, and as a non-New Yorker, it wouldn't have occurred to me that maybe you need people on the inside to really be able to get into the industry.
100%. I mean, it's just different. The way that consumers shop here is different. You don't leave your 5 block radius.
Hmm.
And delivery is a huge thing. Like the idea of me going, I've lived here pretty much on and off for 16 years now. The idea of me leaving my neighborhood to go to Times Square to buy cannabis is just it makes absolutely no sense. Like for me,
Okay.
it would be hey, I'm going to call somebody for delivery because there's just way too much to do here. Or, hey, I'm walking down my street, I'm going to go to my local um, dispensary. So it's more that type of, it's still very local and still very community driven. And that's what's really beautiful about the opportunities here is I think there's something for everybody. So it's going to be a really interesting market to see, people's business plans and strategies on how they're going to make it work out here.
Yeah, I could imagine. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing with the Cannabis Media Council and how that came about.
So that is a really special project. I think everyone who is involved in cannabis knows how hard it is to advertise or market. We don't
Mhm.
have the same tools that are available to other markets. So, for example, Google, Instagram, Facebook are constantly being shut down. So the Cannabis Media Council came to be Joyce Sonali from Big Rock and Snow Hills Farm and Amy Dennison from Pheno Ad Agency in Curaleaf
Hmm.
approached me to participate. They're dear friends and colleagues. They told me about this, and I was super excited. So I am president of that group. I'm also really excited that we have an all-female board. We have Rachel Boykins from Good Tree Capital, based over in Chicago. We have Ophelia Chong, Asian Americans for Cannabis Education. She's based in LA and just a firecracker who's done so many things.
She's
We have
awesome.
Annie. Yeah, she is so awesome. She's like my, I like to call her my mentor, but my fairy god mentor because she's just magical in all ways.
I love that.
We have Annie Davis from Growing Impact, Locana Canna Craft. She is a powerhouse. Allison Disney from Receptor Brands. They've been doing some amazing things and with cannabis as an agency, an advertising, a marketing design agency.
Oh,
We
that's
have Stephanie Honig from the Napa Valley Cannabis Association, been doing a lot of things in the beverage sector. Um,
mm.
Dale Sky Jones, of course, from Oaksterdam Education Powerhouse. I'm actually an Oaksterdam alum
All
from probably
right.
15 years ago. And Carla Lyman from the Lyman Agency, who's our PR powerhouse. So all of these women are just, I respect so much. And we're just really excited to start creating national campaigns akin to the Got Milk for the dairy industry. It's time that our industry move forward together, not as just a brand, not as just one category, but together as an industry to start creating some PSAs that are cannabis positive.
Hmm.
Not just about consumption, but around, it's just a plant. There's so many cool things that you can do with this plant. So we're really excited that we're, talking about releasing our first campaign this year. So look out.
That makes me so excited. I was just talking with a friend recently who just opened a dispensary in New Mexico. It's a new adult use market here as of April of this year. And we were saying, we've got to be more creative with the marketing and the messaging. And I wish there were ways to do broader campaigns that talk about destigmatizing the plant, but without having to get into the negative to change it into the positive. Like, how can we create awareness of it? And like, I think the hemp movement was really successful with that. And I'm trying to think, I interviewed the woman many years ago who was responsible for some of the early hemp campaigns in, I think, Oklahoma before the new farm bill passed. But she focused on uh, pictures of all of the things you can make out of hemp and all of the ways that hemp is powerful and versatile and interesting. And it's not, as she said it, it's not the devil's lettuce. This is like a very useful textile for one. And it was a great way to position it as a consumer product rather than something that is still considered a Schedule One narcotic. So I think that's powerful that you're coming together to do that.
Yeah, I think we need it, and I think like we're at the precipice of federal legalization. So it'd be great to just, start education, start, positive change and understanding of what, this plant is all about, which for me is very much very helpful for physical ailments, pain, nausea, appetite, sleep. There's just so many amazing things. And I think it's time for people to feel comfortable talking about it. I know there's, people are in the green closet. They're nervous about, hey, I use this for sleep, or hey, I'm a parent and, I use this for X, Y, and Z. There's a lot of fear based around that. So we're trying to do is, again, like you said, start normalizing it and destigmatizing it on this national level. And we're very excited about the traction that we're receiving. So, look out coming up. We're going to be releasing our first campaign, and I'm pretty stoked about that.
So, how are you using your years of experience in technology to drive these different businesses you're working with?
So for me, it's all about learning about who we're trying to serve, right? So, it's never, hey, I'm designing something for myself. I'm designing something for, this is my personal way of looking at things.
Mm.
It's very much about, hey, what is our community? So for example, with On the Revel, it's, what is important to our community? Like right now, our program in New York is coming online. So we're changing it a little bit to just really understand what the questions are coming, what questions are being posed from different groups, and we're curating our programming around that. So, and again, with designing anything, it's like, okay, well, understanding who I'm designing this product for, what are their goals, what are their motivations, how are they working currently, how can we design something
Mm.
that just pops into their workflow so it's going to be easy for them to adopt and easy for them to use, right? What we don't want is like what happened with all the seed to sale platforms is like, hey, we have this thing that's worked for agriculture. We've had this thing that's worked for X or Y. Here, use it. And people were like, wait, like I keep having to train people to use it in a way that makes no sense to us. And, the turnover rate is so high sometimes in cannabis that I'm continually trying to like teach people how to use things that don't make sense. And everyone hates their seek to sell, platform. Like everybody I know is like, it's just such a pain in the ass. And, so instead, like with my world of user experience is like, okay, well, let's interview everybody, understand how they work. Let's plot the things that they do similarly. Let's look at the things they do differently, and let's like assess how we can make it so everyone feels comfortable using it in a way that would work for everyone. So it's kind of like that way of thinking, um which I actually love because it helps me learn about different industries. And I'm not an expert in different industries. I'm an expert of understanding how people want to work in these different industries and creating things that are helpful. Like that's how I describe it.
That reminds me, it sounds very like anthropological. Like
Yeah.
you have to understand people, and then I think to make any industry successful, you need to understand how people are interacting with it and using it, and like you said earlier, how to make that process more efficient for them so they can do what they love to do more easily. So I think that's really needed in the cannabis space. I'm reminded of an article submitted from the National Association of Cannabis Businesses for our last issue, but it was about the digital divide in the cannabis industry and how that can really be a barrier, especially for minority business owners. But really, it can be about educational backgrounds. It can be about access to that technology. Is have you run into that kind of tech divide in your work where you're seeing that lack of access?
I mean, I think technology plays a really interesting technology that's built on existing or previous infrastructure. It's hard because then in order to run something, you have to buy all this equipment, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
have to buy servers, you have to buy, machines. That all adds up. So
Yeah.
you can offer a front end subscription based model for like, oh, your social equity, we're going to give you a year free, which is great. But if you're forcing them to buy equipment that's going to cost like 50 to $100,000, that's still a pain in the ass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have other startups that are just launching that are fresh code base, but then they might not have all of the like more complicated things that you need to run your business into one turnkey thing. So now you're managing like 6 different vendors and trying to have them communicate with each other, which is also a pain in the ass. So I joke about this, but I'm like, I'm just waiting for Salesforce or somebody to come and buy everybody and then create a turnkey solution. I don't know if
Yep.
that's the play that everyone is, kind of waiting for, but at just some point it just needs to get easier. And it's also hard to pivot when all of a sudden a state regulation changes and then you are dependent on your technology platform to quickly update that so you can run your business without having a delay or break in your day or 2 or 3 or 4 weeks with some, a couple, I remember a couple of scenarios that happened in Washington state where something changed and the seat to sale operator could not get it done quickly enough. So the whole program for Washington State was down for like two weeks. So
Wow.
those types of scenarios that are just very taxing when it comes to technology. Same thing as it would in another industry, but we don't have, like on the dime, like, okay, tomorrow this is gonna change. Next day that's gonna change. Um, so yeah, there's always little hiccups that happen like that.
Yeah, I was speaking with a woman from she's been working with tribes in Nevada who are, they're sovereign, they're self-regulating, and they're creating their own cannabis laws. But then maybe they're only running like 1 or 2 or 4 dispensaries. And so they've got to have technology that can help them with compliance for just like a handful of businesses. And then another tribe in that same state, same deal, but slight differences. And so they're having to deal with the cost of this technology that, yeah, maybe you can afford Metric if you're the state of Nevada and you've got hundreds of dispensaries or operators. But if you're dealing with small localities, like trying to cover that expense has really been a challenge. So it is interesting to see how technology can really create access, but also barriers. It's just,
Yeah. And another thing I think retailers or folks need to consider and a question to ask is, hey, software platform I'm using, how easy is it for me to access my customer data?
oh, great point,
Yeah.
right?
So I think I've also heard one of the ways they trap you is in order for you to even access your customer data, or if you want to switch to another platform to import all of your customer data, there's fees and around
Wow.
that. So, you know, eh, lots of things to ask, but I think that's really important, especially for folks that are coming online. Like that is a great question. Ask your provider. And if it's not possible, then have them write into the contract.
Yeah, killer point, because that's your customer data is super valuable. And it's the same when you're using like some third party e-commerce platforms will do the same thing,
Yeah,
where that data isn't yours anymore, and then they can market to your customers with other dispensaries if they want to.
right.
So protecting your data right from the start, I think that's a killer point too. Let's take a quick sponsor break. We're gonna keep the lights on here, and then we'll be back with more from Lulu.
Every cultivator knows that facility design can make or break your grow. So why not choose the team with over 15 years of experience in the industry? Cerna Cultivation Technologies provides floor plan and architectural services, comprehensive HVAC/D equipment, lighting and benching, and so much more, all within your budget. It's time to grow your way. Go to Cerna.com. That's SURNA.com to learn more.
And we are back here with Lulu. We're talking about education, technology, and access to the cannabis space. I really like that. It seems like one of the goals of On the Revel is to create like a networking space, networking opportunities for people. Are you seeing a lot more interest in that cannabis sector in New York where people want to come together and learn and talk about tech and figure out how they can find their niche in the industry?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've built a really awesome community for, entrepreneurs, advocacy, investors, and everyone in between. So for the past 6 years, and now what we're trying to do is, just get people aware that, there is a adult use market coming. New York was not that great about their medical program. For the number of doctors and patients we had, it was very disproportionate compared to the population that we have.
Mm.
So now, we are always trying to create a room where everyone is welcome, and I think we do a pretty good job with that. The vibe that we've always created was that of a friend's party, like a hangout. We wanted to give information. We wanted to bring people together for food, for culture. So all the things that you would normally have with cannabis culture, we wanted to do, and also add the opportunity and education and networking piece to it. So I think one thing we do differently than other folks is we never do a call for speakers. Jacoby and I figure out, the programming based on information and questions and kind of what's happening in the New York market. And then we will create programming, and then we'll go through a Rolodex and be like, okay, who would be the best speaker for this? Who would be the best speaker for that? So
That's so good. That's such a good way to do it.
yeah, so all of our speakers are either 1 or 2 degrees separated from us, and that's how we like to keep it. And that really, kind of validates, the folks that we work with, because they're either someone that we've worked with or somebody that our friends have worked with. And that just keeps our community tight, and it kind of, I don't know, it makes it special because you're hanging out with friends now, right? You're like, versus like, oh, here's someone I don't know. I don't know what their background is. I don't know if they've screwed other people in other industries. Like
Mm.
it's happening. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people just popping up like, oh, I help people get social equity license. I'm like, oh, I've never heard of you before, and I've been here for a while. Oh, I see everybody on your board has quit. And that's another thing I just
Mm.
want to point out. If you are investing in real estate, if you're investing in any other industry, please do the same due diligence as you would in those industries as you do in cannabis. I just hear so many stories. It's like, oh, well, I just invested in this company. I'm like, oh, they say blah, 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 blah. I'm like, have you reached out and done a background check? Have
Mm.
you it's just been a lot of that. It's like, oh, I just Googled them and I found that they're in the middle of a lawsuit. So you know that everything you're
Mhm.
investing in, that money is probably going to feed that lawsuit instead of this new invention that no one's heard about.
Wow.
So it was just really encourage everyone. And from my own experience too, I was so glassy-eyed, and learned my lesson. But just please do your due diligence, like research, call, like, do your interviews, the folks that they've worked with. Cannabis is still a very small industry. If you drop someone's name, they probably can tell you all the deals that have been good and all the deals that have been bad. Just learn and make your decision with the correct information that is necessary.
Well, so you're giving people in on the Revel an opportunity to kind of build trust with their community, showcase their expertise, and then also an opportunity to learn and connect with other people who might be more knowledgeable than them or who might need their expertise. Um,
100%. It's just connecting good people
Valuable.
in the room. Yes, connecting good people in the room, whether, it's for cannabis or anything else. One thing we've been really excited and proud to hear is like we've heard so many stories like, oh, I met my business partner at the last On the Revel, or I just got my new job, or hey, I was on a Discord and I just got offered, my new position. So it's happening. And that's what we're trying to do, is just like form your company babies, have your entry point into cannabis with someone that you trust, or someone that we trust. And that's what that's it's all about. It's actually the long game. Cannabis is the long game. It's not like the smash and grab, like let's let's make this happen in a year or two. Like that's not the vibe. And everyone that's tried to do that, the only one that's making money are the lawyers.
Yeah, well said. It does feel like there's this urgency, like an intensity, like now's the time, you got to go. But taking the time to craft your relationships and your brand, I think will pay off for people. What's the next big project you're most excited about for On the Revel or the Media Council?
So we are hosting our first block party in Brooklyn. We're going to have it at Bed-Stuy at Restoration Plaza. This is August 28th, which is a Sunday. So the first time we're actually putting music into our programming as well. So we're going to have, our classic education platform. We have some amazing speakers. And then we're going to bring some music and a traditional New York block party with food and vendors and dance. So that's going to be really exciting. So we keep changing it. At some point, I'm like, Jacoby, why do we do this to ourselves? We have the formula. We got it. And then it's like, okay, now we're going to do something else. So we have that coming up. And then in November, we're hosting our second all-day conference. So we held our first one last year. It was really awesome. We're going to be doing it again this year. And I think so that's 2022. Cannabis Media Council, we're really excited to start our first campaign for national campaign on destigmatizing the plant. So pretty stoked about that. And then I'm also starting a project on genetic authentication and putting it on the blockchain. So that's a side project that's coming up. And then all the stuff with psilocybin testing with Oakland Hi-Fi. So lots of things.
We might have to have another conversation about your genetic on the blockchain project. That's right up my alley. That's super cool.
Yeah, that one I'm really excited about. So I don't know how much I can talk about it, but as that gets underway, I'll definitely reach out, and I'm really excited about it. It's everything that another company I won't name tried to do, except this time it's going to be democratized and people will get a share of everything. So
all right, well, I will be eagerly following that. It sounds exciting. Where can our listeners go, myself included, to follow the projects that you're working on?
So for On the Revel, it's ontherevel.com, REVEL. Our Instagram, we have a Discord called Dope People. The Cannabis Media Council, we have our website up. So if you want to reach out and learn more, please do. It's cannabismediacouncil.com. And yeah, and Oakland Hi-Fi, oaklandhyphae.com. And I think those are all the URLs that I'm currently working with.
I love it. Well, I guess we will conclude it there. I'm so glad you could join us, Lulu. Do you have any parting thoughts for our listeners?
More women, please, on the tech and science side, please come over to cannabis. We really, really need you. We need different ways of thinking. We need collaboration. We need folks to just kind of like arrange all the messy stuff that's happening together.
Yeah.
Put the jigsaw pieces together. So I would really love to see more women on the STEM side of cannabis and other plant medicines as well.
I love that. Yeah, I'm with you. If you'd like to learn more about emerging cannabis technology and hear from other awesome people making change in the space, feel free to follow, like, and subscribe to Cannabis Tech Talks. We're available on Apple, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also pick up the most recent issue of Cannabis and Tech Today with a lot of cool insights like those we just discussed, available on Barnes & Noble newsstands across the country, or check out canatechtoday.com. That's all for this episode, brought to you by Polyscience. And thanks for joining us. Until next time, stay elevated.
Hey, hello, I'm Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong. Wait, you didn't think people would know who I am? Durachill. This is Durachill. This is Durachill. This is Durachill. No, hey, I don't talk like that. You want me to sell this? Buy it. Try Durachill or else. If you want something really nice in your laboratory, buy Durachill. You can't go wrong.